Good morning to all of you. Myself, Dr. Manish Pandey, Department of Sociology, DDU Gorakhpur University. We heartily welcome to you all in this session of short-term course on gender sensitization organized by Department of Sociology and UGC HRD Center, DDU Gorakhpur University, Gorakhpur. In today's session, as resource person, we have fortunate that Professor Balaji Kendre, who is head of Department Sociology, Mumbai University, Mumbai, and also honorable member of Managing Committee of Indian Sociological Society. Sir, Sociology Department and UGC HRD Center of DDU Gorakhpur University heartily welcome you at this session. In this session, course coordinator and head Department of Sociology, Professor Sangeeta Pandey ma'am is also present. I also welcome you and urge you to introduce the resource person to all the participants. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Manishji. A very good morning to all of you. We are delighted to have Professor Balaji Kendre from Bombay University Sociology Department among us. We are delighted to welcome you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
A very great, you are coming from a department which has a very great tradition of Professor G.S. Ghurye and very eminent sociologist of Bombay School. You are following the footsteps of G.S. Ghurye, I may say. He started Indian Sociological Society and you are the managing committee member at present now.
Yeah.
It's a prestigious moment to have you. The topic of today's lecture is gender justice in Indian context. It's your topic today. It will introduce the core issue of our main topic, gender sensitization in Indian context in contemporary India. As you are a director of Rajiv Gandhi Center for Contemporary Studies also, and you have worked on the area of migrant laborers, migration and development is your core area. You are a specialist in the area of inclusive development, I may say. I welcome you, and we are as per instructions of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Rajesh Singh ji, we are planning to prepare a real report on gender sensitization in contemporary India. So I welcome you once again for your lecture. Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Balaji Kendre sir, please commence your lecture.
And we feel that gender is everyday phenomena in our day-to-day life. So what is there to learn? Because sometimes we are happy with our own satisfaction of understanding gender with our own understanding and own perspectives. And we believe that I know everything about the gender. So what is there in understanding, or what is there to know something different is a big question. So in this context, I'll be happy to share some few thoughts and few ideas about gender, and the topic is very much related to the gender sensitization, because the topic which considers sensitization, because that means we need sensitization because we are not sensitive towards it. And I hope that the aim of this particular lecture is not just I am not giving you lecture, but I also want to know from your side what is your understanding of the issue. And at the end, we all should be able to understand the topic in a holistic way, because every theoretical perspective concept is come from different locations with different experiences, and so we feel that that is the finest reality. But as we all know, nobody knows the reality, nobody knows the truth 100%. So we should try our level best to approach the reality, approach the truth, and then accept the truth, and then you will recognize the truth. So in that context, gender is really a sensitive term. It is not only, it is not the monopoly of few people, or it is not the monopoly of one discipline. Again, it is an interdisciplinary term. And many people equate this gender with just sex, differences like male and female, and people feel that only male and female are the two categories, and that is the gender. And whatever is happening with male or female, it is a gender discrimination. But in broader sense, when we talk about gender, gender is not only confined to male and female. We all know it is not that it is confined to only male and female. But certainly when we look at the definitions which are very much available here in the text and in the discipline, we can begin with what is a gender identity. When we talk about gender identity, certainly the one there are so many definitions which talks about gender identity, and one of the definitions state that an individual's internal senses of being a male, female, or something else. An individual's internal sense of being male, female, or something else. Since gender identity is internal, one's gender identity is not necessarily visible to others. So, when we try to read and understand this definition, it is very clear that gender is not visible. See, we just can't say being a male means I'm a gendered male. But what do you feel about yourself? And what do you think about yourself? And that is why it is an individual's internal sense of being male, female, or something else. So, being a male, what do we feel? What is our internal sense? When we read and we will try to understand our whole body and understanding of ourselves. So, what is our sense of being a male? That is important. Even what is the internal sense of being female? Or it is not that only male and female are part of society, but there are different people. They are also part of society, like transgender people, and now different sexual identities are also coming up in the discussion. So, in that context, gender is an individual's internal sense of being a male, and it is not necessarily visible to others. So, if we keep in mind this particular definition of gender in our mind, certainly we become at least aware on what basis we work, or in what basis we judge ourselves in the society, and we judge others also. So that is important. Second thing, many people get confused with the women study centers and gender studies, because women study is not only the center which studies the gender study. Gender study is a very interdisciplinary studies, and it is not involved only women, but in a gender studies men are also studied, and other transgender people are studied, and even your internal sense of being male female is also studied. So in that context, what I am trying to say, being from sociology discipline, and we all know sociology, Professor Yogendra Singh used to call sociology as a revolutionary branch of uh, the knowledge. Means we are creating knowledge, and sociology contributes to the knowledge as a revolutionary branch, because sociology is not defined, attached to one particular idea or one particular group's domination, but it gives space to everyone to think and decide what society should be. So he talks about very interesting things in modernization of Indian traditions, and he wrote exclusively about sociology, and his work is related to social change in India. So while remembering him, we must aware a few ideas, because when I attended one of the refresher course in JNU, I was very much fortunate to listen to him directly in the class. So Yogendra Singh ji used to call sociology as a revolutionary branch of knowledge. So since then I remember that that subject is very much interested, and gender is also one of the specialized field emerging in the sociology, and sociology also has a very broad sense of understanding all these social constructs. So uh, when I cannot directly go and approach the gender, because we need to understand in the larger context, because uh, when we talk about understanding gender in the larger context, first we should be aware of about our societies, because society is not a static phenomena, as August Comte has said. Society is a dynamic phenomena, because changes takes place over a period of time. Certainly the factors of changes are man-made, or sometimes they are natural also. Over a period of time, nature also compels you to adjust with the nature, and when we try to understand uh, the contribution of eminent scholars in the field of sociology, like Anthony Giddens and Ulrich Beck. They talks about a risk society. Risk society, in a certain situations, we create the threats, and we create the manufacture the risk, and we talk about the development. So we don't know what is the development, because development is very fascinating term, and it has so many context in it. So from every context, when we look at development, that everyone's interpretation is different. So what I'm trying to say, from the beginning of human life, there is a fascination of concept called development, because everyone thinks that there should be development, because even in the last two elections, BJP government and its candidate, Prime Minister Modi ji also said that development is the agenda, and but till now nobody knows what is the real development, because after so many years of he's in the chair, people's perception of development is different, and his perception of development is different. So how do we look at the different development is different from context to context. So in the social sciences also, we think that the society should be developed. But in what context we are looking at society, in what sense we are looking at society to be developed, is not, we don't have any concrete idea in our hand. So what I'm trying to say is there are many anthropologists and sociologists, they talk about society, and society is not a static in any form because society changes every day. So for that, we can understand Ferdinand Tönnies concept, community to society. And he talks about how the people from common understanding and common life and common culture comes to the society, and they become individualistic rather than commonality. So in that context, we have to look at the societies which are changing and which will be changing, and it will be continued for the future. So what I'm trying to say is, in a traditional setup, we had a different culture, we had a different way of life, and certainly gender has to also look at traditional society from that perspective. Because in a traditional society, we could experience folk culture and folk arts, folklores, but in modern society, we find popular culture, we find mass culture, which comes with the emergence of mass media. And now we are also getting new technology with the internet, that is social media. So in that context, we can look at the history, because every day, every moment, society is changing. And so we have to also change our mindset and our understanding of the society. Even in the historical context, how do we look at the historical texts? That is also important, because when we look at the Shiva and Parvati, there are many images which are, some of the images we can see half Shiva is there and half Parvati is there, and it denotes that the life of men and women is really essential, and both are the wheels of the cart, and without that cart cannot move, because both are equal. So if you look at that past, that sense of being equal is already there in our culture. But unfortunately, we don't know what are the reasons why we departed from that, and why we get isolated from our culture. And we are searching new equality on the basis of certain parameters. That is also can be critically looked at, and we can get perception that when half Shiva and half Parvati exist, and equality is followed in the religious text also. But again, there are other texts which are highly patriarchal. They feel that male domination is important, and females subordination is justified. So what I'm trying to say, you don't look at all these texts very simply, but you look at it from critical perspective. But all these different texts gives you different ideas about gender, because Shiva never thinks that Parvati is different, and Parvati never thinks that Shiva is different, but they think that they are both are human being, or goddess, or they are equal. So what I am trying to say, equality is not the new phenomena for to search for people, but those who want to know equality existed in traditional societies also. Second example I can give, the very much this gender justice. I don't know what are the exact parameters of the justice, but broad parameters are like women empowerment, equality, freedom, social justice. These are the parameters we use to understand gender in today's modern context. But when we look at the traditional societies, even when this caste system did not exist, that time, even if you just imagine 100 years back, what was the Indian society? When there was no train, there was no vehicle, there was no motorcycle, and there was no any highway, super highway, there was no aeroplane. That time also society survived. And in that, during those time, even small tribal communities, they treated each other with dignity and equality. And that is why even that culture is continued. And that is why when we look at sex ratio among the tribal groups is very high, because they treat their girls and women with dignity in their family, and they never think that women is something which is a problem for society and family. So in that context, but sex ratio is very low among the high elite and rich families, and they consider themselves they are superior in the society. So what I am trying to say, patriarchy exists in the society, but the nature of patriarchy is not uniform. For that, I can just suggest you one name, that is uh, one who talks about graded patriarchy. Who talks about graded patriarchy? Can somebody tells me? Uma Chakravarti talks about graded patriarchy. Patriarchy in our society is not a uniform in all communities and societies, and even in religions also. So she talks about graded patriarchy. Means patriarchy is the enemy of gender justice, that is accepted, but certainly patriarchy is not uniform. You cannot find patriarchy which is found in the higher caste and which is found in the tribal communities and Shudra and Ati Shudra communities. So what I am trying to say, it is a subjective. Social reality is a subjective reality, and we need to really project and recognize reality which is objective reality in the today's discussion of development. So what I am trying to say is, our constitution talks about liberty, equality, and justice. Certainly, in Indian context, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar says all these three principles of development are already there in the Buddhist literature, in the Buddhist thought. So that is one understanding. Second understanding at the larger level is that we got all these three principles from the French Revolution, because French Revolution, we can't be ignorant, because the Enlightened period and French Revolution, which gave us freedom, liberty, and equality. And in our context, we feel that these are our own, parameters of understanding development. So, what I am trying to say, after independence, the guidebook for all of us is Constitution of India, and Constitution talks about freedom, equality, liberty, and social justice. So every individual in the society is guaranteed his certain rights, and in that framework, minorities like sexual minorities, or we can say ethnic groups, their culture is not recognized, their culture is not appreciated, And that is why they get isolated, they get marginalized, and that is the main issue. And if somebody is getting marginalized, the issue is violence, and that is why gender-based violence is really disturbing all of us, and that is why we are talking about gender equality. It is not that gender inequality means people, those who have enjoyed their position for a long time and now they are asking for justice. It is not the true. People are suffering, people do not get recognition, and that is why we are talking about gender justice. And it is our role, it is our main duty to become a sensitized or to become a sensitive towards these particular issues. So it is a very broad interdisciplinary term, and certainly it is everyone's commitment towards the gender sensitization will really help us to make Indian society more robust and more, holistic and more developed in today's context. We all know there are certain situations and certain concepts which are every day on our here. We hear, and those are unity in diversity. What is the unique feature of Indian society? Unity in diversity. And we boast that this uniqueness is found only in India. Many times we say, in India, we are proud to say that we have all the world's religions in our society. So religious plurality is there. And that plurality or that diversity, religious diversity, what is the problem? The problem is not recognizing others. They are also equal. The issue is that equality at this level is also important. Again, religious diversity, social diversity, you will find there are thousands of tribal groups in this country. They speak different language, they come from different culture, they have different expression, their women, men have different culture. So we cherish that. The unity in diversity is a really unique feature for us, and it is a proud moment for us. But within that larger diversity, we find inequality, we find violence, we find marginalization, and those issues need to be addressed, and new identities are also coming. See, people's choice is suppressed in many ways, because talking on gender is very difficult, and since it is not my core area of study, but I am also getting sensitive to the topic by teaching and discussing with you all. Because you all know, when we talk about LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender, everyone gets shocked. Oh, why we are discussing this? As if they are not human beings. So, differences, because our constitution also talks about difference of opinion should be respected and accepted. What we feel, that doesn't mean that others should feel same thing. And so that is why we should respect the difference of opinion, but in our context, these sexual minorities are not really becoming part of our mainstream society. And that is why gender-based violence means gender, I'm not talking, we are targeting women only or men only or transgender people, but those who have internal sense of difference of being men or women is targeted, because our perception about the society, our perception about the behavior of others is different. We don't believe that other people should be behaving in a different way and that is recognized and accepted. So if we really think that the diversity is the beauty of Indian society, then it is our responsibility to protect that diversity of thought, diversity of culture, diversity of way of life, and diversity of thought processes. We can't impose one thought process on society, and we cannot become a liberal, in sense of just representing everyone. We can't represent everyone because everyone has a right to represent themselves. So freedom of expression is important, and if we have to protect unity in diversity, freedom of expression is the core, and freedom of expression of the marginalized group, vulnerable group should come front, and in this case LGBT community is one of the vulnerable group in the gender studies. Second thing, we also feel proud in saying unity is our strength, because despite lot of diversities, we are united. But in what sense? If you don't protect freedom of expression, if we don't protect different cultures, because culture is the subjective phenomena, we all know. Being a social science teachers and social science researchers, culture is not somebody's monopoly, but culture is a subjective phenomena. How do we define the culture at the basic level? Culture is nothing but it is a way of life, and way of life of the people, and in which every individual feels that my identity gets respect in it. If I go to my native place and I live in a very simple cloth, but and without any all these formal dress and all, if I am walking with naked feet, that is also accepted in my culture. What I eat, it is accepted in my culture. Why should be problem for you people what I am eating? Why should be the problem for other people what I am wearing? Only I'm sure that we should not break all the humanitarian rules, but certainly certain context, in a certain context, we should get the freedom. If you monitor me every time and say, ki, oh, how do you look? I don't like it. But why you are judging me? Because when you are judging me, I can also judge you. And that is why freedom of individual is so important. And that has been guaranteed by the Constitution of India. If you don't recognize others' cultures, others' way of life, others' thinking, that means you are anti-human. Because our food pattern, our lifestyle, our way of thinking, everything get impact of the nature. Wherever we stay, wherever we live, nature gives us so many things to live and survive. But now we have been targeting certain groups as if they are useless in this society. We feel that if somebody is different, if somebody is not thinking what I am thinking, oh, remove them, discard them. They are not part of our society. And this will be the serious threat for our society. All people with differences will be eliminated, and they will be considered as a useless and threat for the society. Now we want development, we want natural resources, and we feel that the tribals are the issue. Tribals are disturbing development. Tribals are not allowing these mines to take place. And they are illiterate. They are not contributing to the development. And if such tendencies grows, certainly it will be really harmful for our society. And that is why it is like if we want to protect environment, we have to protect ecology. Everything in the ecology is important. Likewise, if we have to think about society, then every human being is important in the society. Yeah, certainly for certain reasons you can control behavior for certain situations, but you can't impose your ideas on other people's ideas because they are different. So again, there is one article written by Zhang Jialing Martha Ivory. He is a Chinese philosopher. He also talks about half of the man is woman. Half of the man is woman. Because when we talk about men and women, why do you think that we are completely independent entity in the society? We have nothing to do with women and girls and children and boys and girls, and I am entirely different. No, you can't say I am completely independent from women. Your mother, who puts you in her belly for 9 months, she is the soul, whole and soul, who protect you, take care of you, and we should be obliged first to her for allowing her to seeing this particular planet and this particular world. We don't have obligation in many cases, because can we think of society in absence of any different individual, even women and transgender and or different sexual orientation people? No, they are also part and parcel of society, and it is our duty to just respect that. We don't have to do anything. Our problem is that we don't respect others. We don't recognize their contribution to the society, to the culture, to the overall development of humanity. And to become sensitive towards it is a big problem for us, and that is what is expected, that we should always become sensitive towards the vulnerable sections. So what I am trying to say is we are not completely independent, but we are also half women and women are also half men. And that is the way we grow. That should be the basic philosophy of our gender understanding. And they are also part and parcel. But certain texts, certain religious texts, they become highly patriarchal. They put so many restrictions on women and so many restrictions on different groups in the society, like lower caste people, untouchable, and Shudra community people, and they think that, oh, they can't be treated equally because they are different. They are not up to the level of living in the society. But we need to change that mindset, because if you go to the basic of caste system also, what is the truth about the caste? Caste is ascribed status. Caste is a ascribed status. Male is a ascribed status. Female is a ascribed status. That means what is ascribed status? Your contribution is 0 or ascribed status. But unfortunately, we have false pride about it. Oh, I am male. But what is your contribution to become a male? what is your contribution to become any caste member? Your contribution is zero. If I am in one particular religion, what is my contribution? I got it by birth. Why I should have false pride about it? My contribution is almost nil. So, being a male, being a female, or being from any social category or caste does not give you any right to treat other people with equality. And that is what has been guaranteed in the Constitution of India. So, the same thing is with this queer group, LGBT communities. If they think that they want to live in a different way, certainly I'm not, as I said, I'm not giving sermon here about all these things, but I am also getting understanding of the issue, and certainly you will also reply to it with your viewpoints, and we can discuss it at the end of this lecture. But what I am trying to say is everyone's idea of difference must be accepted and respected. So what I was trying to say, what is our contribution in being male, in being female, in being from particular caste? If you believe in rebirth theory, then it is your problem. I don't believe in that rebirth theory. Because if you believe you can live in that world, it is your prerogative. You have a right to do that. But being a sociologist, I don't believe in that rebirth. I don't think that I had made some past mistake and that is why I should suffer in this life. No. We get life once and we should not suffer because of past deeds or past karma. It has nothing to do with present life. So if I have to work on my future, I have to start working hard from now and in this world only. And Constitution gives us right to live and survive. So from that perspective, what is then caste? In caste, our role is zero. But we should not maintain that I come from particular caste and I have got so many privileges because religious texts give us privileges. Our forefathers were that. Oh, we are not denying the contribution of your forefathers. If they have really worked for the society, everyone's forefathers' contribution need to be appreciated. But if we continue and if we still choose to live in that false pride, which is based on ascribed status, is completely denied in this existing modern societies. Now Constitution gives you the strength and Constitution gives you freedom to choose your occupation and prove that you are really great human being. You work hard, you possess your philosophy of humanity, you do for really vulnerable sections of society, those who are poor, because poverty is one of the worst enemy of humanity. What is the worst enemy of humanity? Poverty. Mahatma Gandhi ji equated poverty with violence. Those who are poor, every day they live in violence. They suffer violence. And that is why we all should have sympathy towards the poor. We should not blame them. These people had some mistakes in their past life and they deserve that suffering now. That attitude should not be there. So poverty, inequality, social inequality, and those things need to be focused and highlighted and certainly studied by the sociologists, by the social scientists, and all people, those who are living in poverty must be, understood from different perspectives. We should try our level best to sympathize with them and contribute for some good for good of these people. So what I'm trying to say, this is a very unique subject, and certainly we have to be aware of this. And uh, along with this, I will now start a little bit, conceptual understanding of this particular topic, that is gender. And I will read out whatever is there, what I tried to present before you. So there are certain concepts, because I should not go into the too much detail of telling you what is the concept, because concept is really base for any theoretical understanding. If you are not clear at conceptual level, then you can't theorize that issue. And if you can't theorize that issue, then you can't work on it. So basic understanding of concept is paramount in understanding any particular field of social sciences. So I will begin with certain concepts which are important in gender studies, and then we can go to what is the gender justice in Indian context, and then I can come to the conclusion. So understanding gender and the key concept is critical to being able to clearly articulate gender. It will help you avoid stumbling through concept when you are talking in front of audience, writing, debating, or being interviewed by the press. If you know what you are talking about, say it with confidence and are able to show you are knowledgeable about it by relating it to the variety of issues, you will be taken seriously. It is good idea to go through the gender concepts outline, and certainly we can make up our mindset about the issue. So in the gender studies, one of the most important concepts which has been thoroughly and widely read and discussed and cited is patriarchy. What is the patriarchy? Patriarchy is the manifestation and institutionalization of male dominance against women and children in a families, and extension of this dominance against women in a society. Patriarchal sites where men have the power include all relevant institutions of society: legal, economic, religious, family, culture. Patriarchy institutionalizes male privileges in these same major institutions and is based on the control of women's productive and reproductive abilities. So the heterosexual family is the oldest model of patriarchy and is the place that expresses the worst form of resistance. Now, patriarchy, in a patriarchy there is a underlying feature is male dominance against women and children in families. It institutionalizes male privileges, and that is also the reality. And people think that, oh, family is a very holistic institution. Family, what is the problem? Family problem means, oh, you should not think about my family because it is my private matter. But in your private matter, what you are doing? You are putting huge pressure on women. You are not allowing girls to go to school. You are beating your wives. And there is a huge violence in that private sphere, which is under the control of male. So, we can't live in the fool's paradise. So many studies come out and said, no, family is not the private. Now it should be the state institution, and state should intervene in it. because there is violence. Thousands of women are killed after marriages. Girls are not allowed to born. If they born, they are not treated equally. So then how we can say family is a very holy institution? And that is what has been criticized from the gender perspective. Women's subordination is there in the heterosexual family, that has been recognized. And so in this patriarchal system, now we feel the male dominance is challenged. And many people, it is not something which is mysterious. You can watch media. What are the reasons of killing the wife? Because her husband's ego got hurted. If your ego get hurted, you brutally kill the wife. But tell me one example, or there are maybe one or two, but in 99 cases, women get murdered. In 1 or 2%, even women also not less now in today's modern society. They are so killed and planned in some of the cases, but larger number is women's killing in the family. So patriarchy is one of the enemy of the gender justice system. Second term which is important in the gender justice system is sexism. Sexism is the ideology of male supremacy. It allows men to believe that they are needed for the existence of women, to protect women and give them identity. Cultural sexism leads to exclusionary practices that keep women from participating in development, giving preferences to boys for education, and it really subordinate the status of women. The third concept which is there in the gender justice discourses, that is public. What is public? In Indian context, public is male domination. The public is an exclusionary space where men control and distribute the material and social resources, wealth, power, status, commodities, and women are excluded. One method of excluding women from the public is to make it into a dangerous place where they may face physical or verbal violence, legal exclusion, economic marginalization, and humiliation. An example is harassment of women in public places such as public transport terminuses or football stadiums or at many public places. Again, private is also exclusionary space where men are considered as a head of the family due to the privatization of women's bodies, with all decision-making powers conferred upon him, and thus the state does not interfere. An example is marital rape, which is not acknowledged or legalized against in the most countries. Second important concept related to this is development, is the material and social redistribution of resources and power. Again, one more important concept is stereotypes. A stereotype is widely held but oversimplified belief, image or idea about person, race, group, sex or thing. For example, widely held stereotype is related to idea of good and bad woman or girl, where good woman may be seen as a married woman, while a single mother or divorced woman is considered as a bad woman. Backlash from society against gender equality often comes in the form of accusations that gender activists are just bitter divorced women. When we talk about basically what is the gender itself, Gender is the social constructions of men's and women's role in a given culture or location. Gender roles are distinguished from sex roles, which are biologically determined. Gender equality is where all human beings, both men and women, are free to develop their personal abilities and make choices without the limitations set by stereotypes, rigid gender roles, or prejudices. Gender equality means that the different behaviors, aspirations, and need of women and men are considered, valued, and favored equally. It does not mean that women and men have to become the same, but their rights, responsibilities, and opportunities will not depend on whether they are born male or female. Gender equity refers to the fairness of treatment for women and men according to their respective needs. This may include equal treatment or treatment that is different but considered equivalent in terms of rights, benefits, obligations, and opportunities. In the development context, a gender equity goal often requires built-in measures to compensate for historical and social disadvantages of women. Hence, both gender equity and equality must be pursued in a complementary manner where gender equality is the ultimate goal. In other words, in order to achieve gender equality, it is often necessary to pursue gender equity measures. Gender mainstreaming is the strategy for making the concerns and experiences of the women as well as of the men an integral part of the design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of policies and programs in all political, economic, and societal spheres so that women and men benefit equally. The ultimate goal of mainstreaming is to achieve gender equality. And in this, to achieve this gender equality, affirmative actions are considered utmost important. Affirmative action refers to policies that take into account race, ethnicity, or gender to promote equal opportunity and to redress historical disadvantages resulting from the discrimination. Now, what I feel going through all these concepts, because as I said, gender is not a monopoly of anyone. In the gender justice, justice should be meted out to all men, women, and people with different identities, different aspirations, and gender equity measures must be taken into account, or these can be formulated and implemented. So I think with this was the conceptual understanding of the issue. But now I will be happy to take you all to the topic, which is also important for all of us to understand, and even the topic which was assigned to me or chosen by me is particularly gender justice in Indian context. But as you know, to understand why there is an injustice, because when we talk about justice, first we should think about why there is an injustice and in which context and who are the players involved in it. Through what strategies that injustice is continued. So to understand that, we have to understand certain practices which are there, which really promotes that injustice, gender injustice in Indian context, and that has been studied. One of the author who extensively done field work and throughout country, throughout India, and highlighted some of the practices through which gender injustice has been perpetuated. And that author's name is Leela Dubey. Leela Dubey, she talks on the construction of gender, Hindu girls in patrilineal India. This was the article written by her in Economic and Political Weekly in 1988. And she broadly talks about what are the mechanisms through which women acquire the cultural ideas and values which shape their images of themselves and inform the visions they have of the future. What are the processes by which women are produced as a gendered subject in a patrilineal, very local milieux of Indian society? And her article examines the process of socialization of Hindu girls through rituals and ceremonies, the use of language and practices within and in relation to family. So, in the process of growing up female in a patrilineal Indian society, has what she says he has received inadequate attention from the social scientists. What does it mean to be a girl? At what age does a girl become conscious of the constraint under which she will have to live, of the different values accorded to male and female children, and the justification behind it? When and how does she learn the content of roles appropriate to her? What are the mechanisms through which women acquire cultural ideas and values that shape their images of themselves and inform the visions they have of the future? How do they acquire sensitivity towards the contradictions in values and norms presented to them and towards the limits within which they have to function, necessitating the adoption of particular strategies? In other words, how are women produced as a gendered subject? So, this is a very interesting article. You also can read later on. That is on the construction of gender, Hindu girls in patrilineal India. She talks about how Hindu girls are, socialized, and the way the natural order of thing is imposed on them as a part of patriarchal system. When we talk about the family structure and patterns of kinship are tied to the institution of caste. In the caste system, the fact that membership of discrete and distinct group is defined by birth entails a concern with boundary maintenance through regulation of marriage and sexual relations. Although group placement in most of the Hindu India is governed by the principles of patrilineal descent, in the attribution of caste status to the child, caste of mother is not relevant. The onus of boundary maintenance falls on women because of their role in a biological reproduction. Caste then imparts a special character to the process of growing up female in the Indian society. Now she talks about male child. The recognition of the special value accorded to male child comes early, while surrounded by the affectionate and appreciative parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, and little girl of 3 or 4 may hear the maid servants exclaim on such sweet child, how wonderful it would have been if this was a boy. Means if there is a beautiful girl in our family, people think that how wonderful it would have been if this was a boy. This shows the mindset. And this incident was narrated by M.K. Chandar of University of Mysore to Leela Dubeji. The little girl in question was second daughter of the parents who were hoping for son. The happiness expressed all around at the birth of a son, and the way the parents and the close relatives of the newborn are congratulated can hardly escape the attention of the little girls. The desirability of having sons and undesirability of having more daughters is made explicit, often by outsiders. 4 daughters, each one will take thousands of rupees and walk out of the house. Bringing up daughter is like pouring water in a sand. Parents who have only daughters are pitied. Their future is bleak, for they will have no support or succor in the old age. And in this regard, there is a one Telugu expression conveyed. Bringing up daughter is like watering a plant in another's courtyard. And again, a son born after a daughter is often described as the fruit of penance and woes undertaken by the mother. A male child is so valuable that the sister after whom it is born comes in for special praise as auspicious and auguring good fortune. She is honored in various ways. In Uttar Pradesh, for instance, a lump of jaggery is broken on her back. She has the distinction of bringing in good luck in the form of brother, a son to continue the family. So, when we talk about Maharashtra culture, and in Maharashtra culture in a culture also, such socialization takes place. And she has stated, in many regions, such as in Maharashtra, there are some special days on which daughters of the family are honored. There is a considerable interest in the daughter's clothes, ornaments, and compliments. A saying in Marathi that the father of girl will never remain hungry expresses a general feeling of usefulness of a daughter in the performance of housework. Many parents are proud of their daughters' achievement at school and colleges. The message that gets communicated is, however, invariably that of the immutability of the social system, and that the daughter's stay in her parental home is short-lived. Moreover, not only is there something unnatural about the delay in absence of marriage, but that such situation is full of danger and risk to the reputation of the family. And Oriya proverbs equate daughter with the ghee. Both are valuable, but both begin to stink if not disposed of in time. Because daughter is equated with the ghee. And they says both are valuable, but both begin to stink if not disposed of in time. An expression in Telugu very often repeated by women in the context of worry about marrying a girl at the appropriate time describes the post-pubertal daughter as a boil on the chest. At the premature death of her husband, a woman is consoled that very soon her sons will grow up and look after her. One never hears this being said about daughters. On the contrary, they are looked upon as a liability, and mother is consoled that with the grace of God, these girls too would also married off well. Gauri Puja is celebrated also in parts of some regions, and in these regions, how certain rituals provide one of the important means through which girls come to realize the inevitability of their transfer from natal home to that of the husbands. Sucheta Mujumdar, talking about socialization of Hindu middle class Bengali women, says Durga Puja does carry one important message for young girl. This puja is supposedly in celebration of the goddess's return to her natal home. The fact that it lasts for 5 days in a whole year forcefully suggests to the girls that once married, she too cannot expect to visit her family very often. Durga Puja has parallel in Karnataka, the Gauri Puja. The Gauri Puja celebrated about a month before the Durga Puja commemorate Gauri's visit to her natal home. The song sung by women describe how Gauri entreats Shiva to send her home, and Shiva comes out with the series of arguments which spell out duties of the ideal housewife and mother. An interesting argument that Shiva puts forward is that Ganesha is young, he is used to comfort and luxurious in the house. Gauri's parents are poor. If Ganesha makes demands which her parents cannot fulfill, the child will be miserable. It would also be embarrassment for the parents. Gauri persists in her request, entertaining that she may be allowed to go at least for 3 days. Then comes farewell, the honor of farewell. The atmosphere is heavy. Young girls are often moved to tears, just as they are the weddings of their female relatives and friends when the transfer of bride from the natal family to husband and his family is dramatized through rituals and ceremonies. Gauri Puja conveys young girls the truth that they too will have to leave mother's home. It also underscores a woman's lack of autonomy with the respect of her visit to natal home. In fact, there is a considerable emphasis on possible needs to go before the wishes of the husband and his family, and general on the submissiveness and obedience as a feminine ideal. Gauri Puja is celebrated also in parts of Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh and Maharashtra. Some other festivals in Andhra Pradesh and Maharashtra contain the same ideas of coming home of goddesses or goddesses around the same time as Gauri Puja. Many families celebrate coming home of two Devis, known as elder and younger Mahalakshimis. There are also certain, songs which also helps to socialize all these used like again one example about central India is my child has had you been a son, you would have lived with us and plowed the field and looked after us. I would have served you hot rice, but now you are being sent out of house like a corpse. The song sung in Hindi belt at the time of sending off the bride expressed feeling of sorrow and resentment of the bride. Father, you brought my brother up to be happy. You brought me up for shedding tears. Father, you have brought your son up to give him your house, and you have left the cage for me. See, the expressions of the daughters while leaving their home. She says, you brought up brother to be happy, but for me, for shedding the tears. Father, you brought your son up to give him your house, and for daughters there is a cage. So these kind of practices have been highlighted in this particular text, and which are really part of the process of socialization. There are certain songs meant for the girls alone, songs for the boys and girls, and songs that are meant for the boys alone. The song is, "Do not cry, my beautiful baby. I shall bring a wife for you." If there is a boy, the song is sung in the beginning. "Do not cry, my beautiful baby. I shall bring a wife for you. Her skin will be like a gold. Her lips will be like a nipples of red. I shall fill huge drums with the ghee. I shall cook very fine rice. My son will eat this fill. His wife will lick his empty plates." So, what this shows? It just shows patriarchal mindset. And again, when because again, the one more rhythm is there. "Rockabye baby comes in your pretty hair. The bridegroom will come soon and take you away." The drum beats loudly. The Shena is playing softly. The stranger's son has come to fetch me. "Come, my playmates, come with our toys, let us play. For I shall never play again when I go up to the stranger's house." This is the situation when that girl is going to marry. She asks her girlfriends and says, "Let us have, we will play one, with toys for one moment, because once I go to the husband's house, then I cannot come back and play with you all." She also talks about construction of femininity, pre-pubertal phase, construction of femininity, onset of puberty. Different rituals are performed. She also, narrate all these things, what is fortunate, what is auspicious, from all these gender perspective. And I don't think we have enough time to go through all the details to discuss femininity and sexuality, body, space, and time, because it is an interdisciplinary field, and certainly we need to first become aware about all these gendered practices which are discriminatory in nature. So I just would like to ask organizer how much time is left for me.
5 minutes.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say, how gender concept is now are in the process of development, because unless we define something, we cannot work on it. But certain practices, rituals are also socializing the roles of male and female, and certain rituals, they really don't count the understanding, or don't count the feeling of the women. So in this case, this particular article written by Leela Dubey, in conclusion, it says that the structuring of women as a gendered subject through Hindu rituals and practices is fundamentally implicated in the constitution and reproduction of social system characterized by gender asymmetry and the overall subordination of women. To state this, however, is not to argue that women are passive, unquestioning victims of these practices and the representations of these practices. It is to suggest that Hindu rituals practices set certain women and the different kinship roles within a varying status which they assign to them within the family. The rituals and practices and the social systems are moreover imbued with the certain giveness and appears as a part of natural order of things. It is within these limits that women question their situation, express resentment, use manipulative strategies, often against other women, turn deprivation and self-denial into sources of power and attempt to carve out living space. With this concluding remark, I once again thanks organizer and Sangeeta Pandey ma'am and Dr. Manish Pandey for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this particular wonderful program. So once again, I thank you all. Thank you once.